Welcome to the deep dive. We're going deep today, really deep, into the Silence of the Lambs. But we're not just rewatching it.
Yeah.
We've got this YouTube video essay, and it really dissects the film, its legacy, its impact, all that.
Yeah, it's fascinating. The Silence of the Lambs won all 5 major Academy Awards. All 5. It's rare. And it caused all this debate, and it inspired other filmmakers. And it even, showed up in political rhetoric.
Okay, so why? Why does this film, decades later, still have this hold on us? It's not just a scary movie, is it?
No, not at all. It transcends genre. The Silence of the Lambs does. It's like psychological thriller and crime drama and even commentary on gender, all kind of mixed together. It's potent, and audiences still love it.
So let's start with Hannibal Lecter, the man, the myth, the monster. The essay, it points out how Anthony Hopkins's portrayal, it's on another level, especially compared to the earlier version in Manhunter. What makes Hopkins Lecter so terrifying?
Well, it's fascinating the way Hopkins and the director Jonathan Demme, they use stillness. It's chilling, Lecter's calm. He's not like a raving psychopath. He doesn't need to roar. He's menacing. He's a predator, but he's controlled and still, and those eyes, and it makes him seem even more intelligent, more manipulative.
Yeah, it's like he's always in control, isn't he?
Absolutely. And we, the audience, we become the hunted. We're scrutinized, dissected even.
Right. And Demme uses all those clever camera angles and those POV shots, so we're seeing the world through Lecter's eyes.
Yeah.
It's like we're feeling his gaze on us.
Yes, exactly. Deeply unsettling.
Okay, so we've got the stillness, the calculating intellect. But the essay also talks about how there was this twisted humor to Lecter. It's like he finds our fear amusing.
Oh, absolutely. His humor is as sharp as his mind. He loves wordplay and double meanings, veiled threats even. And that just adds to the menace, doesn't it? Because it shows he's not just, some brute force. He's playing with his victims on an intellectual level.
Right. So he's more engaging, than just a typical slasher villain, multifaceted, smart.
Yeah.
Makes him more terrifying.
And don't forget, Lecter was a brilliant psychiatrist before he became a cannibalistic killer, so he understands people better than anyone, and he uses that to exploit us, our weaknesses, our fears.
Like a dark mirror, right, showing us the potential for evil that we all have, but amplified to this horrifying degree. No wonder he's fascinated audiences for decades.
Yep.
Now, the essay, it makes it clear the Silence of the Lambs isn't just about Lecter's brilliance. It's Clarice Starling's story, too, this young FBI trainee thrown into this terrifying world.
Right. And Clarice, she's not just another female protagonist. In a male-dominated world, she's battling her own demons, you see, symbolized by the screaming lambs from her childhood. And we see her underestimated constantly by men, facing, literal and metaphorical descents into darkness to confront Lecter and Buffalo Bill.
So she's navigating these power dynamics, constantly trying to prove herself. It's a very masculine world.
Yes, exactly. The film uses visual motifs, to emphasize that imbalance. He often films Clarice from below, so the men around her, they tower over her. It's visual.
Yeah.
It reinforces her struggle to be seen, to be heard.
It's like she's under surveillance, isn't it? Not just by the killer she's hunting, but by the whole system. The source even suggests that Clarice, with her strength and her vulnerability, maybe she paved the way for more complex female characters in thrillers.
Yeah, I think there's a strong argument for that. Clarice isn't a flawless, action hero. She's smart, resourceful, but she's vulnerable. She carries her past with her. And she doesn't just rely on, brute force. She uses empathy. She understands human behavior to solve the case.
That's a really interesting point. She's not just reacting to the men around her. She's using her skills, her insights, to carve out her own space.
Yes, exactly. And by doing that, she challenged the typical damsel in distress trope, that we see so much in thrillers.
So we have Lecter, this mastermind, representing the darkest impulses of humanity. And then we have Clarice, this blend of strength and vulnerability, fighting her own demons while confronting the darkness all around her. So it's an interesting dynamic, isn't it?
It is. It's a dance, you see, between hunter and hunted, manipulator and investigator. And that's what makes The Silence of the Lambs so captivating. But there's another figure in this dark ballet that we need to talk about, a figure who has sparked a lot of debate. and controversy. Buffalo Bill.
Yeah, the essay highlights how Buffalo Bill, how his character, he's been praised for his complexity, but also criticized for how he represents LGBTQ plus individuals.
Yeah.
Potentially harmful, you know.
And this is where the discussion about representation gets complicated. The filmmakers, they said they didn't intend to portray Buffalo Bill as a stereotypical gay character, but how he's presented, especially back in the early 90s, it understandably led to concerns.
Yeah, how do we reconcile those views? The film defending its choices, and then the concerns about those choices maybe perpetuating harmful stereotypes.
Well, it requires us to acknowledge that art doesn't exist in a vacuum. It reflects, the social and cultural anxieties of its time. And The Silence of the Lambs, even though it's a brilliant film, it's not immune to those influences.
That's a good point. So while we can appreciate the film, as art, we also have to understand that it might be viewed differently now.
Yeah.
Through a modern lens.
Exactly. The conversation about representation, it's constantly evolving, and it's vital to be mindful of the impact our stories have, especially when we're dealing with sensitive topics like gender identity.
Okay, so we've got this web of characters, challenging themes, and a legacy that keeps sparking debate. But before we go further with those debates, I want to shift gears a bit and talk about how The Silence of the Lambs has, it's seeped into our culture beyond the screen.
Oh, yeah. This is where it gets really interesting. It's become a cultural touchstone. It's referenced everywhere, from comedy sketches to political campaigns.
Wait, political campaigns? That's unexpected. What do you mean?
Well, the essay, it mentions Donald Trump's 2024 presidential campaign. Apparently, he's been using imagery from the film, specifically Hannibal Lecter, as a metaphor for immigration.
Wow. That's a bold move.
Yeah.
So you're saying all immigrants are like Hannibal Lecter?
Well, not explicitly, no. But the implication is there. Lecter's a symbol of danger, something foreign, threatening, that needs to be kept out. It taps into people's fears about security, and it links those fears to immigration.
It's powerful and unsettling too. It really shows how pop culture can be used to shape how we see the world, doesn't it?
It does. It's why it's so important to be media literate, to understand how stories and images can be used to convey messages, often subconsciously.
Right. So it's not just about enjoying the film, right?
Yeah.
It's about understanding it on a deeper level, its meaning, the cultural context, and how it still influences us.
Exactly. The Silence of the Lambs, it demands to be engaged with.
Yeah.
On multiple levels. It's a thriller, it's horror, it's a psychological study, and it's a cultural artifact, all at once.
Wow. Okay, I'm definitely feeling the weight of this deep dive now. We have so much more to cover.
Yeah.
The film's exploration of transformation and identity, its power to scare us, to fascinate us. But for now, let's take a breather and come back refreshed and ready to go even deeper into the dark heart of The Silence of the Lambs. Welcome back to the deep dive. We're really getting into it now, exploring the world of The Silence of the Lambs. Before we took a break, we were talking about how even political campaigns are using imagery of Hannibal Lecter. It's kind of crazy, isn't it? How this film has really gotten into our culture.
It really has. It says something about its power, doesn't it? That it's not just a movie. It's given us these images and ideas and anxieties, that we keep revisiting, reimagining, repurposing even.
Yeah. It's like the film itself is changing, adapting to new contexts, new conversations. Speaking of transformations, the essay makes this interesting point about the idea of descent in the film, visually, I mean.
Oh, right. Yeah. Clarice, she's always going down, isn't she, into the basement of the asylum to see Lecter, the FBI Academy basement.
Yeah.
The firing range, and then finally into Buffalo Bill's, nightmarish lair.
Yeah, she's literally and metaphorically going down into the darkest parts of the human mind, facing her own fears, confronting the monsters in others.
Exactly. It's visual, you see. It's her journey into the heart of darkness, and it leads her to confront her own demons, her own inner demons.
Right. And it's not just visual, is it? The film uses sound to create this feeling of dread and claustrophobia. The essay talks about the sound design, the whispers, the breathing, even the creaking of Buffalo Bill's sewing machine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things that makes this film so effective. It's not just what we see, it's what we hear, you know? Those little sounds, the things that go bump in the night, that's what really that's what gets under your
Yeah,
skin.
yeah. It's like the film it's playing with our senses,
Yeah.
making us more aware of every detail, making us feel, I don't know, vulnerable, trapped,
Yeah.
like Clarice. And there's the music, right? Howard Shore's
Oh,
score.
brilliant. A masterpiece of suspense. The music, it doesn't just, sit under the action. It creates this atmosphere
Uh,
of psychological torment, those low tones, the strings, It's like the sound of anxiety given a musical form.
yeah, it's no wonder that this film it still inspires musicians, composers. It's a master class in using sound to create a truly immersive
Right.
and terrifying
Hmm.
experience.
Yeah.
But beyond all the technical stuff, the Silence of the Lambs, it also asks some pretty big questions, right? About good and evil, the nature of identity, the power of empathy.
Oh, absolutely. It challenges those simple categories. Like, can we really call Lecter, evil when he helps Clarice catch Buffalo Bill? And Clarice, I mean, she's good, obviously, but she also shows, some understanding towards Lecter. It's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the film is saying that the line between good and evil, it's not so clear. It's more of a spectrum. And we're all on that spectrum somewhere.
Yeah.
Capable of both darkness and light.
Right, right. And how the film explores identity, it's nuanced too. Buffalo Bill, he wants to shed his skin,
Yeah.
become something else. He represents this yearning for transformation, but it's distorted, almost monstrous.
Yeah, yeah. Like he's trapped in
Yeah.
a body that he doesn't feel is his true self, and he's trying to change that, but it's driven by inadequacy and rage.
And then you have Clarice. She's on her own journey of self-discovery. She's trying to find her place in this world of men, and she's also trying to deal with her past, her trauma, and reconcile that with her ambitions for the future.
Right. So we have these characters, and they're all grappling with who they are, trying to define themselves in a world that wants to define them. And the big question is what does it mean to be human?
Yeah. And how do we face the darkness in ourselves and in the world without being, consumed by it? It's a question that people have connected with for years, and still relevant, isn't it?
It is. The essay also talks about the performances. Jodie Foster as Clarice, Anthony Hopkins as Lecter. They really brought these characters to life.
Oh, they're iconic. Foster, she's perfect as Clarice.
Yeah.
She captures that strength, but also the vulnerability. She's determined, but she's still carrying that trauma from her past.
And Hopkins is Lecter. He's mesmerizing. He can be charming.
Yeah.
And terrifying. At the same time, he set the bar, really,
Right.
for villains in film.
It's like he's not just playing a character. He's like an archetype,
Yeah.
But the brilliant psychopath who fascinates us, but also repels us.
It's true. It's hard to imagine anyone else as Lecter. They're both so connected to those roles now.
Yeah. It shows how talented they are, but it also says something about the writing and Demme's direction.
Right.
They created a world where these actors could really shine, explore those characters and leave a mark, on film history.
Okay, so we've talked about the characters, the themes, the technical stuff, the impact the film has had, but we're not done. There's still more to explore in the world as the Silence of the Lambs.
Oh yeah, we've only just scratched the surface. There are layers to this film, and the deeper you go, the more fascinating and disturbing it gets.
I'm ready to dive in deeper.
Ratio, welcome back to the deep dive.
We're still down here in the depths of the Silence of the Lambs, and trust me, it gets even more interesting. We were just talking about Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins, and their performances.
Yeah.
They didn't just act. It was like they became Clarice and Lecter.
Oh, absolutely. They set the standard, you
Yeah.
know? They got inside those characters' heads and brought them to life in this chilling, captivating way.
Yeah, and the essay points out that it wasn't just about saying the lines. It was about those unspoken things, those psychological battles going on, beneath the surface, like that first meeting between Clarice and Lecter. So much is happening in that scene, but there's no action, no chase, no explosions.
Right, exactly. It's subtle acting at its best. Hopkins, he's so still, that gaze, quiet, intense. It's all about control. Lecter, he's always in control. Even in that cell, he's dissecting Clarice. with his eyes, looking for weakness. And Foster, she shows that mix of determination and vulnerability brilliantly. She's trying to stay composed and serve herself, but she's also she's being drawn in to Lecter's web.
It's like a chess match.
Yeah.
Every move is meant to unsettle the other person, and the stakes are so high.
Oh yeah, you can feel the tension. Clarice needs Lecter, to catch Buffalo Bill, but he's so dangerous. It's a great example of how it uses dialogue and acting to build suspense, to keep the audience, to keep them hooked.
Right. It's like a thriller. Inside thriller. Now, we were talking about Buffalo Bill earlier, and how his character has caused debate about, LGBTQ plus representation. The filmmakers, they say they weren't trying to create harmful stereotypes.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so interesting, isn't it? It's not just about intent. It's about impact, how a character is seen, how people interpret their actions, their motivations. It changes depending on the audience, the cultural context.
So how do we deal with that? How do we create these complex characters without accidentally creating, harmful stereotypes?
It takes reflection and dialogue. Filmmakers, actors, critics, audiences, we all need to talk about representation, power of images, of stories, and our responsibility, to avoid those harmful narratives.
Yeah. Art doesn't exist in a vacuum. It reflects the time it was created in, the social and cultural anxieties. But art can also challenge those anxieties, make us think differently, help us evolve.
Exactly. And The Silence of the Lambs, even though it's a product of its time, it still makes us talk, makes us debate. And that's a sign of its power, isn't it?
It is. Now, before we finish up, I wanted to go back to something you talked about before, the connection between The Silence of the Lambs and Donald Trump's 2024 campaign.
Oh, right. It's a great example of how pop culture can be appropriated, used for political purposes. Trump using Hannibal Lecter to talk about immigration. It's both, it's clever, but it's also concerning.
Clever because it plays on those basic fears, right? It takes the other immigrants in this case and makes like this pure evil, It's all emotion. It's not logic.
Yeah, it's a way to demonize people, to justify policies based on fear, not reason. And it works. Because Lecter is such a powerful symbol of evil, of something inhuman, something dangerous.
It's a scary example of how powerful stories can be, how they can change how we see the world, change what we believe, what we do.
It shows why it's important to be critical,
Yeah.
When we look at media, we need to understand how stories are made, how they can be used to manipulate us, to get us to believe things, to support things. That might not be good for us.
Right. So The Silence of the Lambs, it's not just a horror film. It's part of our culture. It shows our fears, our fascination with the dark side of human nature, and it shows how powerful stories are, how they shape how we see the world.
It's a film that makes us think, makes us uncomfortable, and it stays with us long after it's over.
Well, we've gone deep into the dark heart of The Silence of the Lambs. We've explored the characters, the themes, the legacy it's left. But the conversation doesn't have to end here.
No, it doesn't. Go back and watch the film again. Think about what we've talked about. Keep exploring these questions about identity, about representation, about the power of stories.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.